So good morning everyone. Welcome to the very first Performance and Monitoring Committee meeting for the next 3 years. Very warm welcome to Your Worship, Mayor Scott, and a special welcome to our new CE, Corin Haynes. So this will be one of your first committee meetings of your tenure, Corin, so it's a very warm welcome and it's lovely to have you here. So welcome everyone. I'm going to ask Councillor Kishan to open us with a karakia, please.
Kia ora ngā mihi Sharon. A kia ino tātou e te atua manaki te amātou i tēnei wā. Ho mai tu aroha me tō wairua maha ki kia tutuki ngā kaupapa kei mua i a mātou. Kia marie, kia tau, kia anu hoki te ako. I te tika i te puno me te marama hoki. Kia whakahonore i te ngua tapu. Āmeni.
Kia ora Kishan. Do we have any apologies for this morning's meeting? None that we are aware of? Okay. Right. Public forum, no one seems to be here for that. So I thought it was worthwhile, given this is our first inaugural meeting of this committee, to set the scene about the role of this committee. Following the elections, Mayor Scott and I met regarding where we believed some of the emphasis needed to be in terms of committee structure, and with a very challenging LTP annual plan and potential changes in legislation, we thought it was timely to consider oversight from a committee setting. And so the purpose of this committee is to provide oversight of all of the consolidated reporting and monitoring that goes on across council, of the non-financial information and the performance measures, especially against the long-term plan, the annual plan, council's strategies and goals, and provide oversight to a very special part of our council activities, emergency management. So it's a very broad brush, but this will be one committee as we work together over the next few years to ensure the consolidation and monitoring provides a forum for that to happen. So at the end of this committee meeting, I'll reflect on our specific terms of reference and how our discussion this morning has matched against those, because I think there is an important role for all of us around this table to ensure that we don't miss stuff, and we ensure that what we as council have committed to our community we are delivering on, and if not, why not? So with that oversight in mind, I'd just welcome everyone to work through the agenda. Do we have any items that aren't on the agenda for today? Do we have any conflicts of interest in relation to any matters arising out of the meeting today? None, thank you. Right, so let's get into it. So item 6.1, please, Peter, would you come forward and present to us your management report on emergency services? Thank you. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Chair Sharon, and good morning to Mayor Scott and fellow councillors. I'll take the report as read, but there's just a few things I want to highlight in it. And in clause 2.1.1, yesterday Mike Dunn was appointed controller. It was signed off by the Joint Committee, which Mayor Scott was at. So he will go on to the regional group plan as of now as another controller for our district. Clause 6.3.1, there was a word that was missed out, and it should read 20 schools, and I think it's just got the number 20, so it should read 20 schools were closed. Also, I just with the recent events that we've had in this reporting period, which was 3, I'd like to commend Mayor Scott on his calm and thorough approach to these events. And he had his first one 2 weeks after elections, so it was a crash course for Scott. And then we've had another one 2 days after that, and then obviously the one in February. But yeah, I commend you, Mayor Scott, for your calm and thorough approach. It certainly made the activation of the EOC very calm, and it was great to have that support there from you. So thank you very much for that. And then, of course, 4 months after election, Mayor Scott had his first declaration, so that probably doesn't happen very often, but it happened. So since that February weather event, which is obviously, there's a summary in the report there, work continues for continual development, readiness, processes, systems. And for example, just yesterday, our GIS manager, Blair Rogers, came into my office and showed me the work that he's improved on our GIS capability for in an emergency event. And that's to do with the GIS mapping and information situational viewer that he has developed. So when the roading teams go out, they can take quick capture, which is an app, and that photo and information comes straight into the EOC. So if they come across a slip, they take a photo, it's GPSed, it says the road where it is, and all that information comes straight into the EOC. So that's the type of stuff that's going on in the background that people don't even realise. So that just continues, and same with community involvement and preparedness. For example, Sarah Ann and I are heading out to Herville tomorrow to debrief the community on the event and how they were impacted out there with the self-evacuations happening in the middle of the night that night, and just see what other improvements we can do. One thing that's come out of that is it's been a request to lower the siren that goes when there's a high river alert out there. So we got Horizons working on board right now to try and get that lowered so they get a bit more warning when the river comes up out there. So there's lots of stuff happening, as well as obviously ongoing staff training. That's just continue. We got staff booked on courses already throughout the year, and more staff looking at courses. So yeah, it's just a continual thing. But I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I was just fascinated by the real-time information you're getting back, from photos on phones. In the Emergency Operations Centre, do you have a map of the district that would automatically update, or we're not quite there yet, or what's the story?
Yes, we do. Yeah, so we can bring that map I was talking about up. We can have it up on one of our screens, and updates, don't quote me, I think it's Blair said every 5 to 10 minutes it'll update. Just the same as the roading status on the council website does the same type of thing.
Councillor Keishan.
Kia ora, and yeah, thank you for all your guys' mahi during these events. More recently, in the last state of emergency, a lot of marae were said to have been equipped with some tools to support the community during these times, but I wasn't too sure what council's relationship was in that, and some marae were a bit confused as to what the procedures were, should they need to have people staying at the maraes, and I'd just like to know what council's relationship is with those marae that have the equipment to support the community in these times, as well as what are your expectations then of marae, and what is their role to play?
Yeah, so we were involved in equipping marae out. So we, through our recovery fund, which finished June last year, we were allocated $15,000 to each marae. And so Sarah and myself met with the marae and asked what they wanted to spend that $15,000 on. And they all had their various things that they wanted to, and it was all to do with marae preparedness and resilience. And for example, Kaitoki, they spent their 15,000 on upgrading their amenities block, because obviously if they're going to house people, they've got to have the ablutions to house people. So that was just one example. Some marae got generators, heaters, so we were involved in that way. Also, marae have been invited and have participated in various training courses. So last year we ran Civil Defence Centre training and needs assessment training that some marae committee did attend to those. And we were, until the weather event happened in February, we had programmed in on the following Tuesday to have another training out at Te Whiti for that same type of training, and that was just for marae to come to. And I think, I don't know the numbers, but I think there was at least 12 people were going to come to that. That's been postponed, obviously, because of the event, but so we're just looking at programming and another date there. So hopefully after that training, they will know their, what will be required of them. But we do have contacts for all the marae around the district. And I know Sarah was in contact with Rini Pea for Papauma out there during that event. So, yeah, we're in constant contact with them.
Just supplementary to that. So if you've given the pūtea from the cyclone, is that from Cyclone Gabriel? And it was up to the marae to then, amongst themselves, use that pūtea to be prepared for these sorts of kaupapa to happen, weather events, etc.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. With our support, and we've said to all of them, if that whatever they need from us, just get hold of us. Yeah, like I say, we've got contacts for them all, and we've been in talks with them all. Just for example, just last week I went down to Woodville and put in a civil defence radio into the marae down there. So why our marae have civil defence radios, except Te Whiti, which we were going to do at that training day, and we'll do so. They'll all have communications should cell phone networks go down as well.
Scott.
Thanks very much, Chair Sharon. Are you okay if I make comments rather than questions? I just want to double check. I'll wait. Thank you.
Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Sharon. Peter, again, thank you for all the work done over the past few months. We've had a busy few periods, and I do appreciate that, and I know down south that they do as well. I did have some questions around the emergency management bill and pieces there. As it's not enacted, when does that currently look to be enacted, and when that is done, has there been a review on what the changes are looking like? Have we done like an analysis of what this will look like and how the decisions will affect how we do stuff?
I believe the bill's out for consultation right now, so I haven't had an update from Region on where it's at recently, so I can't really tell you where the bill is right now, but I know it's out for consultation, and Region is putting in some consultation documents for that. How it's going to affect us going forward, I mean, I think from what I read, the changes in there, which I have highlighted some of those changes that are there, I think it's going to be better because it's more clear cut. And Corin and I had a brief discussion on it this morning. For example, the chief executives are mentioned in the new Act quite a bit, so it makes it kind of more clear cut on who does what and who's responsible for what. Yeah, the changes in there, from what I've read and like I've put into the report, we've already got in place or stuff happening. It's not to say there's not going to be any new stuff that we need to develop, but yeah, so I can't really give you where exactly the bill's at right now.
Thanks, Councillor Chris. That was one of the questions that I had. And further to that supplementary, Pete, in 4.5.1, you mentioned that the formal review of the local plans following that legislation will be provided. Will that come to this committee for updating, in your view?
So the local plans that we have is, we don't have a civil defence district plan. There used to be one written, and our previous CE and controller got rid of that because it was like a big novel. What we do have is we have other plans. So we have our standard operational procedure plans. We have a earthquake plan, we have welfare plan, we have a tsunami plan. So we've got those type of plans, which are kind of operational plans. Whether they would, like the review is, I review them annually anyway, just to make sure everything's up to date. So yeah, whether it comes to this committee, I'm not sure. It's more probably operational, but yeah.
No, I completely concur. I was more interested in understanding, based on Councillor Chris's question, that when the legislation has been enacted, whether there will be a review of how we align, as you've stated there in that item, Peter, and I think an update to this committee would be completely appropriate when that. I'm with you. We don't need the operational stuff, but I think providing oversight to ensure that any new legislation compliance requirements have been reflected in our overall strategy, I think would be timely for this committee to review. I have one more question before I go to statements. Is there any other questions? Councillor Chris?
Thank you. I have a few. One in regards to the telecommunications outage. It had a wide impact. You know, I'll talk. I've got another question to it as well, but specifically to our local volunteers, with the inability to receive messages through AMS and other systems that they use. I know there was work done with the telcos to strengthen their sites and everything. I don't know if that's been continuing. But is that something that's really council can help with, to focus telcos to make sure that that's more available to where we had outages?
Yeah, for sure. So at our emergency management response group meetings, we have the telcos come to those, well, particularly Chorus. So just an example from lessons learnt in that Ekatahuna wind event. On the Sunday of the February weather event, I was in contact with my contact with Chorus to make sure they had generators ready to go to the any of their equipment. Chorus don't look after the actual cell phone towers, so that's Spark and 1NZ. So Downer are the contractors to supply generators to those cell phone towers. So we were in contact with Downer that same morning, just after that phone call to Chorus, and they assured me they had 10 generators ready to deploy should the need arise. So there is certainly lessons been learnt since that February event, and they have more generators readily available.
Thank you, Chair. Another question in regards to 5.1.8, but the delivery of the generators and Starlink, you know, which we had come down to, I know, Ekatahuna, and I think you had them going to other places as well. It would be good to have the availability of Starlink in some of these places, in, you know, prior to the fact. Because yeah, it found that once we lost communication without power, we really had very little information coming in, and we had because our truck sitting in the fire station doesn't receive calls, so we have to actually park it outside and have someone sitting in it waiting for something to come through, because we had no notification of anything. That was through the October events. Is there a likelihood to get Starlink available in some of the civil defence areas or through some of the emergency service areas that we can have as a hub for council?
Yep, for sure. Peter Windsor is actually looking into that, and he has been for the last probably month or two, on not necessarily pre-deploying our current Starlinks, but maybe looking at future purchases for Starlinks permanently somewhere in our major towns. When we first got, we do have 10 Starlinks for deployment, which we got through our recovery funding after Gabriel. And we did look at whether we would put them out into the wider communities. The biggest problem is security. For example, we supplied these communities with generators as well. Within 2 months, we had one generator stolen. So out of a secured, locked room inside a hall. So that's the biggest kind of worry, is that security. But Peter and I have been talking about whether we get some type of Starlink systems at least onto our service centres, so people have got some type of access to it potentially.
Any other questions? Okay, I have one. Peter, sorry, we're going in and out of your report a bit, but with regard to the 2.1.1, where you've reflected on the capabilities of our staff, and it seems to me that it's a very impressive rate of completed training as a percentage across our staff. How does that compare to other councils?
From the reports that I hear, we are pretty high up there, if not one of the probably better councils in the region. Palmerston North City is definitely on the improve. They've had a lot of uptake on their training, and they were way down, but I think all councils now are on the way up. And we were, I said to Corin this morning, we 4 years ago, we weren't up there. So that was one of my first aims, was to get our staff capable to man the EOC. So yeah, I don't know the stats, but just from talks with other, at our emergency management professional meetings, councils are all certainly improving, but I think we are one of the better ones in the region here.
Yes, Scott.
Thanks, Chair Sharon. Just one question in relation to the events that we had. There's been quite a lot of talk at regional level about our region's lack of a rain radar, and knowing the positive impact that may have. So as context, we are one of, if not the only region that doesn't have our own dedicated rain radar. My question is whether we are providing any inputs into that at regional level. It's definitely a focus of theirs, and they're seeking support of mayors to try and push this politically. Have we been able to explain and articulate to region how that could benefit us having more accurate prediction of rainfall?
We have certainly talked about it at our regional emergency management professional meetings, and we've all provided verbal input to the subject when it comes up, for sure. And after Gabriel, we voiced our concerns pretty high up with the lack of rain information in general that we had over here. And since then, Horizons have put in more rain stations around. But the rain radar thing you're talking about, yep, I think we are one of the few regions that don't have our own radar, thunderstorm watch, all that type of stuff. We go either Wellington or Hawke's Bay. But yeah, we certainly discuss it at our EM professional meetings.
Thanks, Chair Sharon. Could I request some consideration by the team to document some of the advantages that would have for us as a district, and perhaps reflecting on the weather event that we just had, how that might have been able to give us more targeted information so we can provide that through to Horizons to support their crusade and us obtaining funding for one. I know they're working on a business case now, but I would love for the Tararua district's input to be included in that.
Yep, for sure, and I'll touch base with Shay Hook to see where he's at with that, and definitely tell him that we want an input into that.
Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll be prepared to take comments and statements to close this out. No other questions? Okay, did you have a comment, Mayor Scott?
Thanks very much, Chair Sharon. Appreciate that. And yes, no, I do have a few comments. Pete, first of all, thank you to you and your team for all you do to keep us safe in the district. It was a real pleasure at the Joint Standing Committee yesterday to move the approval of Mike Dunn as an extra controller, which was unanimously agreed, but great to see our capability and capacity growing. On 2.3, you talk about in the technology section, the D4H emergency management software, which I know that we've had a discussion about before. During the Joint Standing Committee, we received a demo of that software. So just wanted to add that I'm very, very supportive of us aligning with regional neighbours. I think that's the push to see if we can be on the same type of tech. But the capability of that system, I think would really enhance staff's ability to respond. So wanted to add that. I also just want to, in general, talk about the weather event that we most recently had, and pass a sincere thanks to yourself, to our controllers, and also to all of the staff. And we've talked a little bit about the training, but all of the staff that drop their day roles and move straight into their EOC roles, staying overnight. And there's a number of those staff in the room now. Also, the support as a new mayor that I received from all of the team was exceptional. We received some incredible support from Horizons as well, so I want to acknowledge that, and that certainly helped me make my decision to make the declaration. But also, most importantly, I think our community, and seeing the way that our community responded to the threat was really heartening, and that doesn't happen by accident. So we have great people in our community, absolutely, but the reason why the response was as strong as what it was because of all of the preparation that yourself, that Sarah and others in the team have done to make sure that they are ready to respond. So I just wanted to officially put on record my sincere thank you to everyone that was involved.
Tracy.
And also I just want to put a thank you out to the people that remained in BAU to step up and support the BAU functioning while the team extracted out into emergency. So it's a whole team effort, and thank you to everyone involved with working with your team as well as continuing in the background for council. Thank you.
Well said, Tracy. Any other comments or statements? Councillor Chris?
Thank you, Chair Sharon. And like Scott has said, and everyone else, I think we do appreciate the support. It's been good to see, in my opinion, what looks like a change in communication and how things are coming across to the public. That there's more resilience being built up in those areas. especially in a lot of our remote places and stuff. I know we've always had things in place, but I think now it's more verbalised and brought across. There was one piece that I wanted to bring up, and it's a little bit sort of, personal to me, from a call that we had to deal with on the original, in the first set of storms we had in October. So we had a call out to go to a member of public who was purple alert into a cardiac arrest. And looking into it when we were there, it looked like his family had left the night before to go to somewhere where there was power and they could shower the kids and the grandkids and go just have some warm food or anything else. So he stayed at home to stay on the farm. It was found, so he had left his property in his vehicle, crossed the road and crashed into the ditch across the road from his house. Emergency services was called by one of our local firefighters who works for him and attended it. We didn't get a call. The AMS didn't go off and no fire siren in the town. So I am on a different phone carrier, so I received a call on that, and I turn up to there. There's no one else around. I open the door because there's no power, so I'm having to manually lift the door, and by the time I've got my gear on and the door open, there's still no one else there. Luckily, some of the other people get the satellite connection through Starlink to their cell phones, so we did get another couple of firefighters did arrive, but it was 7 or 8 minutes before we left the door. And as you know, in a situation for a cardiac arrest is quite critical. It was sad we weren't able to do anything further. He had gone through that, but the sort of piece that we were looking to and how we get our communication across in regards to people being able to use their cell phone even in the matter of an emergency. And I know we brought this up and there was a little bit, but I think it's something that we need to really highlight, because I didn't know this beforehand, that even if you didn't have cell phone coverage on your phone through your carrier, if you still try the emergency services, it goes through. And this was new to me as well. So I think it was something to highlight, and maybe something we look at how we can promote that further. But it was definitely a bit of an eye-opening experience with no communication, how critically we are connected, especially in those situations. I know it was it's hard to say exactly what went on. We can assume on a few things, but I think it's still really appreciated the work that's being done now and seeing these things that are coming through, but making people aware and going out, I think, is a really big part of what we really need to focus on in the future. But thank you to your team and to all of the work that's done in here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chris. I think it's probably fair to say, Pete, that and you're welcome to respond to that, but that there's always ways to do things better, isn't there? And I think when there's a number of multi-agencies involved in situations like that, the word around communication is quite important. Do you wish to respond to Councillor Chris, or happy for me to close this part?
Yes, I agree. Councillor Chris, when communications go down like they did, it really highlights how we really rely on our communications, from day to day in our BAU that we take for granted, right? So, that wind event, and what we learnt with the 111 system, that was all new to probably a lot of us out there. And definitely events going forward, we need to keep promoting that from both council and the communities around, if you need one-on-one, ring it, but stay on the line, because sometimes it takes a while to switch from one, if you're with Spark, it takes a while to connect with 1NZ or 2 Degrees or whatever it is. So communications are key, right? And that's communications out to the public during any event. which, and I thank you for your comments on that. I think you're right, our communications definitely have improved, but it's all through lessons learned.
And with that, I'll just make some closing comments to this report. A sincere thank you, Peter, for putting together this very excellent and comprehensive report. The level of detail that you've provided us with in an update on the past few months is certainly valued. I was very excited when the prospect of having emergency management come into this committee oversight, and I'm very grateful that you've taken the time to do that. I think we have a real sense here that Tauranga District Council can be very proud of the development of the skills in our team. You've reflected that in your report, but also acknowledge and recognise the extensive collaboration that goes on. We're not operating in a silo here, and I think the networks that you've managed to establish are wide-reaching across our community. I think it demonstrates the excellent value in this function that we have under the TDC. I also want to thank you, Pete, for acknowledging Mayor Scott. Throughout all of his communications, he was always very, he praised the team. It wasn't about him, it was about the team, the work that they were all putting in after hours, during the night, across the border. But I think it goes a long way to demonstrate from top to bottom the value and the respect that we have for the functions of EOC within our team. So well done, Pete. Thank you. I look forward to further updates to this committee. Because it is a monitoring committee, I'm quite keen to have an action recorded. Given that we still don't know the legislation and the impact that it might have, I would propose that there is an action sits on our register until the time comes where we review the impact of that legislation on our operational processes. And I'll expect to see that on our register until it's completed. Are there any other actions that other councillors might propose? Or have I covered it off? Councillor Peter.
I don't know, with regard to the Emergency Management Act, whether we will need to put a submission in. Is there, like, to provide any feedback, or are you pretty comfortable with the, should have been a question earlier, sorry. You know, but it seems to me, you know, a lot of these changes are happening and we need to be, if there's something there that we want changed or something that we want to add to it, that we should be putting a submission in.
Here I am trying to close it off. Mayor Scott, comment, question?
No, I think it's just, and I think it's a very important comment that that Councillor Peters mentioned. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think submissions may have closed, but the view for it was that we would allow Region to take a lead on our behalf with our inputs with that.
We have a CE comment here from Corin. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, just to confirm, submissions did close during February. So I think Tautuara and LGNZ put in submissions. Right, and the region is as well, yeah.
Okay. Once again, thank you, Pete. Welcome. Very good to see you at that head table. So we'll look forward to an update in our next meeting in 3 months' time. So keep up the good work. Thank you, Pete. Right, everyone, we'll move on to item 6.2, which is... Oh, apologies. Can I please have a move for the recommendation that the report from the Emergency Management Advisor concerning the Emergency Management Report be received? We have moved by Mayor Scott, seconded by Councillor Chris. All those in favour? Apologies. Okay, moving on to 6.2, and I'd invite Tracy McDonald, our CFO, to perhaps set the context and introduce this particular report. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. Hi, Sarah. Sarah has a big task today. She's talking to the service report, which has my name on it, but Sarah is the complete narrative on that, which comes through from my review. So thank you, Sarah, for doing that. Also, unfortunately, Fontaine hasn't been able to attend today due to personal reasons. So Sarah and myself will take notes when we go through that part of the section of the management report, which we can then take back to Fontaine and bring back to the next meeting. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Tracy. Before you get in there, Sarah, I just want to take the time to acknowledge this could be a fairly grunty report, and I have suggested to my fellow councillors that it may be helpful, Sarah, to perhaps set the wider context around a number of the issues that we'll be talking about in this report. I think it's very timely, and thank you, Tracy, for allowing us, for requesting that these topics be updated to us today. Given the timeliness of us entering into the long-term planning process, these discussions and a bit of deep diving into some of these topics are of real value. So please be gentle with us and accept that there will be quite a few questions today, but it may pay, Sarah, for you to set the wider context for us to start with. So thank you very much and welcome.
Morena, Chair, Deputy Mayor Wards, councillors, and obviously our Mayor Scott. Thank you for having me here today. I'll start with the service performance. We'll take the report as read, and I'll just run you through a bit of background as our Deputy Mayor has suggested. So your service performance report is a report that you will receive from us quarterly, and it feeds into the final annual report that you'll get from the finance team in August. Service performance measures are what normal Joe Blogs would call a KPI. So these are your key performance indicators that we as a council have adopted as part of our long-term plan, and these are what we are saying reflects our performance against our activities, and we report on those. So it's a really key timing with the LTP coming up. You will be revisiting all of these KPIs, service performance measures, per every activity, and it's really important that we make sure that the KPIs we set reflect the levels of service we want to have within that activity. But also the really good part about it is the ongoing monitoring, and then what we're going to do about measures that aren't being met is an area that we can really improve on and can help our community by doing so. So I've given in the report a bit of a blurb around the change in service performance measures. We had quite a significant increase in the 21-31 long-term plan. 24-34 long-term plan, my apologies, from the previous LTP. Audit will go through these with a fine-tooth comb. They will make sure that A, they're fit for purpose, and B, that they are a true reflection of what we're trying to achieve within each activity. So on page 12, there is a table that sort of breaks our performance measures down into three key categories. So there's a category that we refer to as council. So these are measures that we as a council have suggested help us measure our performance. There are survey measures which are either conducted by each activity in a means of their own. So for example, the library is a really good example actually. They have a survey measure which is around their children's program, reading program, and so obviously that's not a measure we want everyone to feed into. We just want to hone in on that little targeted group. So those are the types of survey measures that we have in there. But then we also have a community survey, which in this current financial year we're just under the process of changing how that is done. In the past, it was done by a key research company, and it was done in 3 waves. So we would go out 3 times in the year and we would seek community feedback, and it was done by the electoral roll and just chosen at random. You got sent a QR code and you had to log in and complete the survey. Of that, we actually only had a survey response rate of 8%. And of those surveys, 69% of those measures were not met in the year ending June 2025. So this sort of prompted us to revisit the way in which we conduct those surveys. So this year, we are having one survey that goes out in May, and you'll see that written within the report as well. And that is going to be done slightly differently. I'm not the person that's going to be doing that, so I don't know too many details, so please bear with me if you have questions on that. And then the last group that we have here is called the mandatory group. So the Department of Internal Affairs has mandated performance measures that we as councils, all councils, need to be working towards and achieving, and this is a way that they can measure performance across council because we're all specified in the same way. These sit within our roading, our footpaths, and our Three Waters activities. Have I lost anyone yet? No? Okay. All right, so I've tried to show the trends of our surveys in a different way to what we have previously reported on, and you'll see that on page 13. So in the line graph that we have there, you can see how our performance is tracked from 30 June 24 to where we are at 31 December 2025. As you can see, we've improved from our performance from each quarter. We haven't got to March yet, but what I do want to stress in there is that in the June 2025 results, there are survey results coming in, obviously, which brought those results down a little bit. So we won't know that until May, or your 12-month report, which will come in July, August. I've also broken these down by our activities of council, so our thriving district, our improving environment, just so you can see who's on track, where it needs improvement, and where it's not yet measured. As you can see, that not yet measured is quite a significant number. Almost half of our measures are still sitting in that. So some of those are mandatory measures. Like in our Three Waters space, for example, we have to get an external consultant to come in and do an assessment to make sure that we are compliant with the drinking water standards. I think that's around 5 of our measures just in there. The other couple are in the roading, which is around our sealed, how much of our network has been sealed, resealed. Obviously, we can't do that until the end of the financial year, but they're all sort of detailed within the publication that's attached to it as well. I'm quite, with the results at the 6-month mark, if there is still room for, if we've fallen just under, I've classed these measures as needs improvement because there is still room for improvement. When we get to the 3rd quarter result, I think this is where you'll see a flag where we're in trouble with this measure, or this measure is unlikely to be met. When we get to that stage, we ask that our GMs and our staff put in quite a bit of a narrative around it. So you'll see that come in the next report. So don't panic just yet, but just be aware that when your next report comes, there'll be a lot more commentary that will go with it. When collating this report, one measure that I do want to talk to is around our public conveniences, and you'll see our result has deteriorated quite significantly from 96.7% on target in the 1st quarter to 60.36%. On my review of that, the staff member has just not put in a resolution time, but they've closed the CRM, so that's a training issue, and that's something we're going to work through, and I will have these corrected for our 3rd quarter report. So just before you see it and ask questions, just highlight it's a temporary thing, and I will have it rectified for the 9-month report. Any questions?
Sarah, look, fantastic context. There's 2 ways we could probably approach this. I have some fairly general questions, and then I believe if you're comfortable and councillors are quite keen to have a bit of a dig into some of the specifics. But I'm really grateful that you took the time to set the scene, because I'm sure that's probably ticked off a few questions for some of our newer councillors that are really keen to understand this. This is the model against which our community measures us. And so it is a really good tool. I think some of us in previous times may have expressed some concern about how long it takes to find these things out and the difficulty it is in turning it around. But May and the third quarter results are really the pinch point. That's what you're indicating. So I'm going to take some general questions first. So if you want to deep dive into public conveniences, just give us a moment. But are there any general questions before we do have a dive in? Councillor Peter.
I assume the targets are the annual targets, not the quarterly targets.
Yes, they are, and they're the targets that we set within the long-term plan. So in the long-term plan, you are required to set targets for each of the years that the long-term plan is applicable to. So sometimes if it's a new measure, you might come in with a lower sort of target and then you'll increase it over the next 2 years to show that you've improved performance. That's very normal. But these are all wonderful things that you get to do shortly.
Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. In the performance report, there's a lot of data and a lot of bits and pieces around what is not yet measured, and that's a little bit hard to sort of go through. I know that in the public, they do go through and read this and do see that's a common thing there. In regards to a lot of the items in there, and I'll just pick on one, for instance, your communications team, the call centres and calls drops, just for instance. They should be able to have measures, or there should be more measures that are more current from a lot of the different data that you should be able to get, especially through call centres and many other different departments within there. It might be worthwhile having that for the next lot, and maybe more updated from anything that can be easily stripped from systems that are within council, so that it's not just waiting for a report that goes out or a survey that goes out, that it's actually at the time, much like people walking in the front door. A survey at that time would be not hard to get set up, but why wait until May or June or later to get the end of the year to get that? So sort of a comment, but a question into, is there and look at doing some changes into how we can get the data from the systems, especially where it's available?
Excellent question through you, Chair, Deputy Mayor. Sorry. We have changed the way we're doing that in this current financial year. So we found that we were receiving within the survey people who were marking our public conveniences, let's pick on public conveniences, we're marking our public conveniences quite poorly. However, they weren't actually users of our public conveniences. So one of the ways in which we're trying to combat that this financial year is there is a QR code in the facility and you can scan it and give real-time feedback at that point. Our customer services team are also looking to implement a system as you walk in. I think it's one of the measures that are showing in there that's not yet met. That's something that they put in the long-term plan and we're hoping to have up and running for this financial year. So watch this space on that one. With regards to the call centre data, we have all of that data live in our system. It's something we can definitely look to bring in for the next report, just have a snip of what that screen looks like so you can see the volume of calls and what that sort of does. Definitely feedback we can look to factor in.
Yeah, and just supplementary to that, and that goes across the board for pretty much any department that has live data. Anything that you could sort of seek running to budget or to plan, that type of stuff in this report would be really good, rather than waiting for annually or 6 monthly, because it helps with us, especially coming up with a long-term plan, thinking ahead and how we can approach it. And I think as a new councillor, it's definitely something that's useful, and I'll see what the CE has to say.
Well, we're certainly going to invite our new CE to make some comments or questions on this. We'll still keep it fairly high level though, team, if that's okay. Thank you, Corin.
Cool, thank you, Chair. And I think we're probably talking about two things. I think we've got, and you will set the measures for council through the LTP, and what we're doing here is reporting on those, and it's important that we keep to that and report that. However, also appreciate that there is the ability to bring to committee and council richer data which actually supports your understanding of the business and how it's performing. And I believe we can do both. And it's just about making sure that we've got our resources focused to ensure that we can report on those KPIs as we're required to do, but also then give you some of those other pieces. So we'll absolutely look at that.
Thank you, Corin. Tracy, you wish to make a comment?
Thank you, Sharon. Also, I believe that Jim brings a lot of that statutory work in his updates when he brings his regulatory updates. He brought a lot of stats of performance of the facilities and the regulatory team with how fast they were turning over calls, how fast they were, the compliance to the legal requirements of timelines and so forth. So that comes in that arena as well. So maybe I'll take away a note just to probably refresh all you as well of when that information's coming to you. We can go from there as well. There might be a lot already in there, I think, in a different forum. Yeah.
That's a good point you've highlighted. Thank you, Tracy, because one of the challenges this committee will have is if it's seen as the hold-all of everything that we're monitoring, there are going to be overlaps, and we need to fine-tune that as this committee grows. Thank you, Sarah. I do have a slightly higher level question around the setting of those measures. If I'm right, the only ones that we can influence are the council ones. We're stuck with the mandatory ones. We're stuck with the survey ones. No, those can change as well. The point that I think you're making, though, and you and Corin, is let's report on what we have agreed to report on, but being very mindful that we will have some influence on what the next lot of measures might look like. Do you have a sense of, have we got too many? Have we not got enough?
Feedback that we received last long-term plan was that we had a lot of internal KPIs and we were having them externally, so definitely something we should look to revisit.
Peter?
I noticed in a number of the KPIs or key measurements that there's an increase from baseline is the target, and there's no baseline there for us to know what the baseline was to increase from. Is that something we can improve on?
So where we've implemented a brand new performance measure and we're not quite sure what we want the target to be because we just want to gather more data, that's where we've said that the baseline is the measure. So that's usually in one financial year. And then the next financial year, we've obviously got that baseline data and we want to be improving on it. So this long-term plan, I would imagine those measures, should they be retained, we actually set a target on those because we've got the data at that point. So that's where a lot of those baseline measures have come from, yeah.
Any other questions at that higher level? I think May's going to be a critical time. What you've outlined for us, Sarah, is that in the next 3 months when the committee meets again, there'll obviously be a lot more reporting on data that has been captured in some way, shape or form. I was going to ask about a state of the nation overall at this stage, but I think there's too many gaps in the data analysis to be able to provide that with any meaning.
Through you, Chair, I completely agree. Sandy has just shared with me that a lot of her communications and a lot of the comm stuff and her customer services team goes through the community connections group. So it might be something that we in this report just have a snip from each of the previous, and then you've got that data coming through as well. Just to throw that out there as a suggestion.
I think that's a very valuable way of looking at it, actually, Sarah, and that will just provide the overall lens from our monitoring perspective. So with Sarah's support, have we got any specific questions when we reflect on pages, it's effectively page 18, no, page 20 onwards in detail. So I'm going to be a bit like the referee in tennis, umpire, going ding, ding, ding. So we'll go for Councillor Peter first. Thank you, Peter.
I'm going to start going down from the top and work my way down. And please bear with me. It's just so that I can get a better understanding. I'm not being picky, but the first, and I'll let other people have a turn as well. On the community development, we've, and the economic development. So both of those things not yet measured with the restructure of economic development. No work has been done on this work stream. Is this something that we need to bring back into full council to figure out how we deal with this, or is it just, what's the rationale, or should this actually be coming out of the performance and monitoring report if we're not doing any work on it?
Mayor Scott, if you can reflect on that, please.
Thanks very much, Chair Sharon. Councillor Peter, thank you. I will have some comments at the end, and that was part of my comments in that particular part. No, they don't need to come into full council. Where we'll be refining those is through our long-term plan workshops to make sure that we have the right measures chosen. It'd be fair to say that we didn't get some of these measures quite right as we went through the long-term plan. So we set these at a slightly earlier stage and then made a decision as we came towards the crunch point of the long-term plan to remove resource from a couple of areas. Two particular areas were economic development and community development, and that was in response to rates affordability. What we didn't do at the same time, which on reflection we probably should have, is when we made that decision, we should have said, how did that impact our performance report? And let's remove some of those because we're not doing them. Because the long-term plan passed, this was part of the long-term plan, we're stuck with them until we have a new long-term plan.
Does that clarify, or is further question? Yep.
Just so supplementary to that question then, is there some other category we could use rather than needs improvement to describe it? Or are we stuck with only those three?
Through you, Deputy Chair. Through you, Chair. Sorry, I will get it right eventually. Because they're in the long-term plan, we are required to report on them, and we're required to report on them in a consistent manner. So we can't just remove them from one quarter report to another. We also tend to only have these three categories that we do have. Come the third quarter has nothing changed, I'll probably move them into a not met category. They obviously affect our overall performance.
Any further? Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if I could go back a little bit further, back into the management report, if that's okay. Just ask some questions. They're probably a bit more...
Higher level still?
No high detail. Do you want to skip that, go to high level?
I don't know, no. I want to be in the detail now,
okay. So on page 15, specifically the section around the financials on...
Sorry, Councillor Chris.
Okay.
No, that's the next topic. I want to make sure we've dealt with service performance.
Service performance.
And we'll take a break before we go into the...
Okay, that's fine.
Topic.
No, that's cool.
So let's stick with the tables from page 19 onwards. Councillor Peter.
I don't know whether you want to go through all mine first and then that. So on page 28, reduced waste to landfill. So we were wanting to reduce the amount of waste to less than 250 kilograms. I was wondering, it seemed to me that where's the waste going to go if it's not going to go to the landfill? Or are we trying to, and we've also got the then reduce the waste to landfill by increasing the recycling, is it that we're trying to actually get more of the waste into recycling, or are we just wanting people not to dump their rubbish? Because I find that we're getting more and more rubbish as we get more and more packaging on everything. So I just wanted a bit of clarification on that.
You should have been part of this council a long time ago, Councillor Peter. And I was watching Hamish in the background getting all very excited about explaining this. So, Hamish, if you can clarify Councillor Peter's concerns.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Sharon, Mayor Scott and councillors. So in the waste management space, we have a document called the Waste Minimisation Management Plan that was adopted 18 months ago, I suppose, now, which is, I guess, an overarching plan to minimise the amount of waste that is generated within the community. And so it includes things like education and encouraging recycling and different opportunities. So we're talking about less things going into landfill, more things being recycled. So we don't want batteries, we don't want steel, things that can be recycled and reused, and plastics and that side of things. So it's really a measure of how well we can get the community to recycle rather than dispose to landfill. Thank you.
Good explanation. Thank you, Hamish. Comfortable with that, Councillor Peter? We want to keep going with you.
Keep going for me.
Keep going.
On page 10, page 29 of the report, or page 10 of your report, of the actual report, number of complaints received by council about the performance of its stormwater system per 1,000 properties. The target is less than 9, and the 6 month is 3.73. That seems to me like it's on target. Why is that needs improvement?
I think I've classed it there because half of 9 is 4.5 and it's pretty close to 4. I'm more harsh to not set up a more hope in the future. Come third quarter, hopefully that changes. Does it?
I'm very comfortable with that. It's just there's a number of measurements in there, like 1 hour, 5 hours, and various other things like that. And it seemed to me that they should be less than 1 hour and 5 hours. Is there any reason why it's not less than?
9 times out of 10, it's just that the less than symbol was missed from the published document, and we are held accountable to the published document.
Another good answer. Okay, so there's an asterisk there. Sorry. I may have missed the asterisk, and there may be a comment there. But there's a number of measurements where we've got a numeric measurement, and I'm looking at page 32 at the moment. Interruptions to supply are minimised, and less than 5, and we've got a needs improvement because we're currently at 5.25 at 6 months. So that says to me that that's not achieved, not needs improvement. And there's a number of measures like that, so I won't go through every one of them, I promise, but it's, yeah.
I'll give you a comment back through you, Chair Sharon. These are based off the number of CRMs that are received. So as the year goes, this number will change. So if we receive more CRMs and if we're able to respond to the new CRMs in a more timely manner, or all of these sort of things that feed into it, that result will change, and it changes each month because it's off your CRM, it's live data. So that's why I've set it in the needs to improvement category and not willing to make that commitment just yet.
I think one of the challenges that we have is, and you're all over it, Sarah. I have to commend you on your understanding of what's in, what's out, what's less, what's more,
Yeah.
and the base measures. So,
I was expecting a lot of, we'll have to come back to you on that, so you're doing exceptionally well.
so congratulations for that.
Yeah.
How much, have we got many more, Peter?
No, I don't think so. We're getting towards the end of the
Okay,
report, but
I'll-
if you bear with me just a little bit longer,
Go for it, Councillor Peter.
I'm a little bit of a detailed person when it comes to numbers, and not so good on the emotions. But anyway, the page 38. So we're getting down there. Page 38. We've got facilities are well utilised. In the 3-month target, we were at 37%. The 6-month target, we're at 5%. Seemed to me, if we were at 37% at 3 months, we should, and even if they weren't used at all in the second 3 months, we'd be at 18.5.
I think you'll find that it's a miscalculation that's been done by the team and it will improve in the third quarter. That's why I've not added any extensive commentary. Generally, this is one of the things that each quarter the team work out how they did it last time. So it will 9 times out of 10 be that. But should it be 5% come quarter 3, you'll have a bit more of a narration around what's driving that, so that can help you inform your long-term plan measures.
Cool. So thanks for that. And then I had a number of other ones that were, we're not achieved, but just based on the numbers. Coming down to page 46, so rapidly getting towards the end now. I was just noticed that protect public health by monitoring, advising and inspecting of food services, and we're woefully behind, and we've not even done some. I was just wondering if there was a reason why that's happened.
Through you, Chair Sharon, this is just around the cyclical nature around when we conduct these inspections and when we conduct the inspections effectively. If you were to compare this report to the 6-month report that we would have produced last year, we would have been quite similar. The team really pick up the results in the next 6 months. So that's why I've sort of not given too much, because my understanding is that by year end we will be on target, and I've not been provided information to say otherwise.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Page 50, I just noticed on the abandoned calls it seems to have jumped up. Having been in the contact centre industry for over 20 years, I know that a lot of contact centres will set a time before the abandoned call thing kicks in, and because if people hang up within 2 rings, they weren't really serious callers. I don't know whether there's any baseline on that, but that'll come back in another report probably at some stage. It's just because the answered calls was on target and was good, and the abandoned calls just seemed to be high. And whether there was, Councillor Chris was asking about the volume of calls that we received earlier, and is this happening at peak times, or is there some other thing that we need to look at? But it's still a very low figure, so from what I've seen in contact centres, I didn't have any really concerns about it, but it would be nice to know what constitutes that at some stage.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. It is worth doing a deep dive into this to be able to understand the complexity of what our non-financial service performance measures cover. So it might have seemed, oh, come on, but it's well worth asking these questions. And I think, you probably get a sense from what Sarah's saying that the next report will be a lot gruntier with I'm sure, we won't use the word hopefully, I'm sure there will be narratives that explain the trends and around the activities that are ongoing. Do we have any more detailed questions regarding the service performance measures and targets? Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. And Peter, thank you for all the questions. You asked many of mine. And I think if we go back a few, I just want to highlight a couple of points. On page 38 around facility bookings, is the increase in cost of booking these facilities, is that also looking like it's an impact towards that?
Through you, Chair Sharon, if I recall correctly, in the annual plan for the 25-26 financial year, our fees and charges didn't increase too substantially for our facilities. So I wouldn't imagine that's impacting on that result. What we do, and I do know the team has quite a thorough data log around that, so maybe we can look as part of the data request that came through, we can look to see what more we can provide in that space. But I'll also check to other reports to make sure it's not already reported there as well.
Thank you. On another item, page 41, with our number of complaints that we're getting around mowing of lawns and other bits and pieces directly to us, I would have expected some more data there. Again, it's probably down to how we measure more than actually, what data we have. But is there any comments around that?
Through you, Chair Sharon, we wouldn't be providing more data in this report because that sounds like a different performance measure that you might want to be factoring in your long-term plan. Doesn't mean to say that within the other committees they're not already reporting that information as well. So let us at our next meeting, bring forward all of the other reports and see how best we can collate this as well. Noting that this is a requirement for audit that we have to do for our reporting, but also try and manage the live data aspect that you're trying to seek as well.
Yeah, thank you. I also had a question also on page 41 in regards to playgrounds with defects. The change in measure, the details noted in the 24-25 result of the numbers, that would have been good to see instead of just a percentage number. So rather than a 2% increase, it would be good to see actual numbers in those situations rather than changing it, if that's possible.
I think one of the things you're pointing out here, Councillor Chris, is the dilemma we have that the idea that we had a year ago and or in the LTP may not 18 months, 2 years on, be the best way of reflecting it. So as Sarah has reinforced, we have to report against what we said we were going to measure, not necessarily what some of us might think might be more relevant now. So we have an opportunity to address that at some stage. Any more detailed questions regarding the service performance targets and measures? Before Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. One more item on page 51 around the digital presence. Again, this might be down to what was expected in the long-term plan and the measurement method, but rather than, say, for instance, looking at followers for Facebook view, it's more interactions. We'll give you a better measure of actually how that's progressing rather than just people who have clicked follow in the past, so a more active level of detail. I don't know if that's something that comes up.
I think a number of these issues, Ali beside me has just reflected, there'll be some reports coming through our community committees, connections as well. So how we bring all that together to make it, a comprehensive report is something that we can all work on. I'd quite like to bring this little part of the management report to a close to give ourselves a break. I'm happy to go to closing comments regarding this. We'll start with you, Mayor Scott.
Thanks, Chair Sharon. Thanks for all the work that you do, by the way, team, and everyone else who contributes to this report. It can be a bit frustrating to see sometimes because this is, like we've well traversed, things that the previous council set and decided that these were some of the key things that we wanted to monitor as part of our LTP. In no means, though, is it the only things that we monitor as a team. It's just they won't necessarily be within this report. It does show how important it is for us in LTP to get these right. It's an area of particular interest to me, and will be something that this committee will be having a lens over. I already made comments about how we made changes to economic development and community development before, but I think that also highlights how important it is, because it's been a constant frustration to see those being reported each time, knowing that we actually could have fixed that before we adopted the LTP, but lesson learned from there. One thing I want to just make as a general comment, though, we should not be afraid of seeing underperforming things being reported within this report. That is our job, to be monitoring that, and as an opportunity when we come into our annual budget and then our long-term plans to say, what can we do to improve it? Or if it doesn't matter, why are we reporting on it? Unless it's mandatory, of course, Sarah. But I just wanted to highlight that we will be talking a lot about this. Remember this report and this conversation when we get to that part of the LTP, because if we don't get it right, then we're going to have to be facing the consequences of that for a few years. Thank you, Chair Sharon.
Well said, Mayor Scott. Comments? Councillor Peter?
I just want to say thank you very much for the explanations. I asked the questions in the expectation that there would be good answers, and I wasn't disappointed, so thank you very much.
Any other closing comments for this one? I can only concur, Sarah, you and the team behind you, because we know it takes a team to pull all of this together, have done a fantastic job, continue to do a fantastic job. I think the reflection Mayor Scott has shared, though, would be my closing comment to this particular part of the report, that the KPIs, these performance measures, are how the community judges us, and the level of service that they expect, we need to ensure the measures are meaningful for that. And I completely endorse what Ms Scott has said, that we need to be looking at ourselves very closely during this LTP process to make sure that what we would like to be measuring and monitoring need to be meaningful. Otherwise, we're back to the conversation that Ms Scott has said. Very much look forward to the third quarter results in our next report, Sarah, but I want to thank you for all the work to get us to this stage. I would suggest that we probably need a 10-minute break, and we'll welcome you back for the next part of the report. So if you could just take us through that. So welcome back, everyone. Sarah, thank you for coming forward to speak to us on item number 4 in the management report. Perhaps you could provide the wider context to start with, and then I'm pretty sure we've got a number of questions regarding this matter. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. Really important piece of information that I'm going to give right up front and really stress. Pensioner housing is a self-funding activity. What that means is that there is no rates that contribute to this activity of council, but consequently, if pensioner housing runs at a surplus, there is no rates reduction to offset that. So just really want to stress pensioner housing has no impact on the rates calculation. With that wonderful news being said, Council has owned a number of pensioner housing units over the past. I think it was maybe the 2018 long-term plan, a decision was made to divest the portfolio at that point. And during that time, our pensioner housing reserve came into quite a bit of funds as we were selling off properties. In the 21-31 long-term plan, we had a change in council and a change of heart, and made a resolution to retain our pensioner housing units at that point, but also not only retain them, but grow our portfolio a little. So a decision was made to utilise the reserves to build 6 brand new units, which I believe are at Afton Court. Don't quote me on that. Is it? Yes. Afton Court, which depleted our reserve effectively. They came in a little bit more than what we anticipated, and as a result, the pensioner housing reserve went into overdraft, so to speak. What that means for this activity to be a self-funding activity is that we, the finance team, charge interest to that activity for their overdrawn. So they've effectively borrowed from council's treasury portfolio, and they're being charged interest like they would for any other overdraft. So just really wanting to set the scene on that bit. Last annual plan, we did a significant amount of work around looking to move our pensioner units to a more market rent-based approach. We had a reserve that was significantly overdrawn. We had units that needed to be maintained or brought up to the healthy home standard. So we kind of, in a workshop setting, laid everything out there, which is what this paper is now about, where we've just updated what went into that March presentation and just going to talk through that. So what you'll see within the paper is number 4.3, we have our historic rent increases. So broken down per type of units that we have and in their locations, and what our proposed fee is going to be for the coming 26-27 annual plan. What I haven't explained to you yet, and I apologise, under Dannenberg you'll see there's a 2-bedroom contribution unit. What that means is council had at a time where we had, I don't know how many, we had at least 7 off the top of my head units where we would go out and get a market valuation done. The tenant would contribute, put that money into council, so they would say the market value of that property was $50,000. They would provide council $50,000. We would hold it in a trust fund, which is shown in our annual report. I don't have that page number, but I can send that to you. And as a result, because we had use of the funds or were gaining interest on those funds, they got a reduced rate of rent. So the rent for those units was lower than the other units, but it was enough to cover the maintenance and the services that we provide for our pensioner housing. Okay, so 4.3, there is our rent history, and as you can see, from 2020 to 2027, it's grown quite significantly. I'm just going to talk you through number 4.4, just from my perspective, just so that you fully understand what it is. Our gross rent is showing as a negative figure. So the negative is because it's revenue generating, and the team that put the numbers in, that's how they understood it. And then your expenditure is a positive figure. Just The reason I'm highlighting this is because you get to the net profit, and if you're in accounting mind, you would go, we've made a loss, and I don't want you to think we've made a loss. There is a profit sitting there. It's showing as negative purely because we've got the revenue as a negative and the expenses as a positive. So apologies, can rectify that for another time, but just highly stressing that there is a net profit for those units, well, for our portfolio. So what we're sort of showing here is, again, the trend over the time since 2020, how we're tracking and what's in our proposed numbers for 26, 27. We've got our capital purchases sitting in here as well, because as I said, this is all comes out of the same pensioner housing reserve. It's all one pot. And then at the bottom there, we show where we went from a 982,000 positive reserve all the way down to an overdrawn reserve of 373,000. So just showing that with the work that we did in 2024-25, that has come down to a 207 overdrawn balance, and then in 25-26, again, what we're projecting is to still be slightly overdrawn, but make an improvement. And then number 26-27, the proposed financial year, is we're estimating we should come into surplus. I want to stress that to do that, a lot of our capital works have been phased or will come up as part of your deep dive and your work with your long-term plan for the pensioner housing activity. The team have included the condition assessments that they've done as at 30 June, and also I believe all units meet the healthy home standards. I apologise if I'm wrong, and I can correct that if I am. The next page, page 16, sorry, I've just flipped pages. On page 16, there is what refurbished units have been done, where a bathroom's been done, carpet. So just giving you a bit more of understanding around the volume of work that's taken place. And then they've included, the team has put in the 25-26 capital works program that is on track. And then what we're proposing the capitals renewal program to be for 26-27. Oh look, there it is, healthy homes. We are compliant. I'm going to go to the next page, 4.9, because this is probably my favourite part. Is I love a pictorial that sort of shows how we're tracking and where it's sort of landed, and that shows obviously where it's come from. 2018 was 1.12 million, so come a long way from then. And then the second graph is where we were projecting the balance to be. So in the presentation from March 25, it was going to take a lot longer, and the council of the day made a pretty bold call to increase our rents at that point in time. So kudos to them for making that difficult decision, because it has brought the portfolio back to where we sort of need it to be, but also not underestimating the volume of works that's needed to continue in this next LTP state. Within that presentation, we identified risks, and we've just provided updated commentary around our performance on those. We've made a call as part of, might have been the, I can't actually tell you what long-term plan, but we've made a call that as a contribution unit is vacated, that they're converted into just part of the other portfolio, so therefore generating more revenue for council with the same amount of expenses sort of going out. And with that, Chair Sharon, I think that's the history.
Fantastic, fantastic. Because we've, as a committee, requested this as a deep dive, I'm going to take it in chunks, Sarah. So we'll go section by section and take questions from everyone. I'll have a starter for 10, which is a fairly high level one. Thank you for reinforcing that this is not rate funded. You did indicate, however, that when the reserves were not looking so flash, that in order to keep the status of these pensioner units up to scratch, we borrowed effectively internally from Treasury. Can you please explain to me, and in simple terms, does the fact that we borrowed internally, does it have an effect on our overall debt profile and therefore had an implication on rates, or are you able to code it out so it's completely separate and there is no impact whenever we were setting rates around trying to pay back debt? Can you just please confirm for me? Thank you.
Excellent question, Chair Sharon. Because of the way the pensioner housing is completely isolated from every other activity of council, when that reserve is overdrawn, the Treasury function charges interest at the rate in which council incurs interest to that activity. I can't specifically comment on whether it has meant we have increased our debt at any point in time, because our debt portfolio sits at the Treasury level. It doesn't sit at the individual activity level. But noting other reserves that we would have had on hand that it would have internally borrowed against, I can't imagine it's had a significant impact. But no rates impact as a result of this would have occurred. All interest is charged back.
Fantastic, thank you. I'll go to Mayor Scott and then you, Tracy, if you wish to make a...
Thanks, Chair Sharon. Could I just get an indication from you of what section you're starting with first?
I have not started the sections yet. I was taking a very high level
I'll start there then.
approach, but I'll just check. Was yours a high level comment, Tracy, or do you?
Sarah actually jumped in at the last minute and said the interest is on charge, so I just wanted to clarify what that means is that when we're charging inside the portfolio, our rents are covering the cost of that interest, which has a margin over and above what it costs us.
Right, so now I'm going to guide us in section by section. Is there any questions before end of 4.2? Because I thought maybe the detail started at 4.3. Mayor Scott.
Thanks, Chair Sharon. 4.2.7, Sarah, you've added in there an LTP consideration. Just wondering what that might look like for council if we made the decision to do it. I have some concerns, and we'll jump in there, about the significant level of rent increases that our pensioner housing has had over the short term or medium term, and that was with some debate at the time. But I just want to get a better understanding of how, one, that might impact our tenants, but how that might impact us, because it's quite a large asset base, so I'm sure that it has wider financial considerations.
I'll answer that. That was my paragraph to pop in there, so I'll talk to it. So we will be bringing some financial workings on what increase in rates would bring to the benefit of the ratepayers by actually dribbling that back into a reduction into rates for everyone. Inside those papers, there's going to be those discretionary decisions makings around socially, is it a decision we want to make versus an opportunity for a financial gain to benefit all of the ratepayers. So these are papers we're going to bring with pros and cons around all the options, and then those facts will be used to make any decisions by council.
Thank you, Tracy. Could I ask, in that work, I think we actually do need to spend some time on what that might look like, but also that consideration to Government Systems Improvement Bill is included in that, of what core responsibilities are for council and how a trust structure might be able to meet that, just to make sure that we're future-proofing our decisions.
Yes, Mayor Scott, it is focused around the System Improvement Bill, and a trust has been one of the considerations that we will bring forward as well. Thanks.
Excellent point. Thank you, Mayor Scott. Any questions still on 4.2? Councillor Peter.
Yeah, so just the government subsidy that's available for social housing in the event it was moved to a trust, is that significant? I have no clue. Yeah.
Do you have that detail, Sarah or Tracy?
Through you, Chair Sandra. We don't have the numbers, but we know that it creates an opportunity to the residents of the pensioner housing to be able to go to the government funding opportunities, which they cannot exercise under a local government-owned pensioner housing.
Thanks very much, Chair Sharon. Just as a tiny bit more context, this is something the last council talked a little bit about. One of the strange and peculiar disadvantages we have of having pensioner housing is they're not considered social housing. And because they're not considered social housing, it means that they're not eligible for some government subsidies. So the tenants of those are effectively missing out, particularly as we require this to be self-funding. Some of that rent advantage that they may have had in previous years has reduced. So,
Good explanation, Ms Scott. Councillor Kishan. We'll wait to see if we've cleared out 4.2 yet. Any other questions? I think the discussion that has been had is an extremely powerful one. You would have heard in the history from Sarah that the councils over time have changed their minds about this, and you know, what's being reflected here in this discussion is with central government indicating their views around what is core council business and what isn't. There are obviously some iterations that we as council need to seriously consider during the process we're about to undertake. So very relevant highlight that Mayor Scott has given us here. So if people are okay, I'm going to move on to 4.3 and open up the floor for questions around the rental charges and the history there. Any questions? 4.3. Councillor Kishan.
Kia ora, and thank you for this report. It's really easy to read as a new councillor, so thank you. And just wanted to add that. Yeah, the jump of price, I'm just looking at there. I just want to know, you know, some of our most vulnerable community members are living in these spaces. And I guess I just wanted to understand whether or not, because of the price increase, if our most vulnerable are still able to afford, like what's the waiting list like, and is it full? Are people still able to afford these spaces?
Oh, here comes Hamish, but my understanding is that the waiting list, there is still a waiting list. But to answer the rest of your question, I'm going to hand to Hamish. Sorry.
I think Sarah sort of took my thunder there a little bit. No, that's fine. I did that to her earlier. Yeah, I mean, the waiting list is still fairly high, I guess, for the size of the community we have. So, yeah, I think the ability to pay and the ability for some of those people to get subsidies from the likes of WINS and that sort of thing is helpful, I suppose, to offset it. But, yeah.
I'd probably just add that we as a council provide a greater service than what other social housing providers would do. We remove the rubbish, we do the gardens, we do the lawns, we do a significant amount in that space, which when we get to 4.4, you'll see some of those cost increases sort of flowing through.
There has been a track record of balancing the affordability versus the fact that when you're looking at a reserve balance that was looking sadder and sadder, you know, one of the tough calls we had to make at the time was to increase the rates. But it's a very valid and important questions that you've raised, Councillor Kishan. Councillor Peter?
Yeah, have we had any any residents default on payments, or have we had any arrears problems at all?
Through you, Chair Sharon, no, we haven't. But Hamish was just going to share that we are still quite below the market rental for what these units are. So we did factor that in as part of that 25-26 annual plan discussion. I think we're in the lower quartile end of it. Yeah.
And one more question. Obviously, you're planning on keeping the rate the same this financial year. There's no long-term plan to increase it because we're now starting to get back into a positive fund.
Through you, Chair Sharon, I would imagine there will always be an inflationary adjustment that would need to be considered. The reason for the 26-27 with the no changes, we did take a substantial increase in that 25-26 financial year. So just trying to provide a little bit of relief in that space where we can see the reserve is coming back into balance. However, I'm not going to sit here and say there'll be no increases, because knowing council and the way they charge rates in our insurance, we will have more than an inflationary adjustment.
I think the simple answer is watch the space and guess what question you're going to be asked in the LTP process. Any more questions around 4.3? Mayor Scott.
Thanks very much, Chair Sharon. I'll frame this as a question rather than a statement. Just give me a sec. So through you, Chair Sharon, through to Sarah or Tracy, would it be correct to say that the fees and charges, although you have given some proposed figures here, will be a decision for council, and councillors will have the opportunity to debate and decide that? Is that correct?
Through you, Chair Sharon, the proposed fees and charges will be coming to the full council on the 25th of March 2026.
Very good phrasing as a question, Mayor Scott. Tracy.
I just wanted to add to that as well, that there's a real focus, as we know, on the LTP workings. So we've been focused on that for the 26-27 annual plan, which you will see coming through shortly, and the more debatable changes that we may enter into in regards to pensioner, which can look, as I should say, quite a few different ways, to be honest, at the moment. That'll come through in the LTP workshopping. Thank you.
This question?
Absolutely.
Go, Mayor Scott.
It is absolutely a question, and an important one. I just want to, through you, Chair Sharon, just absolutely seek your clarity on the fact that all fees and charges are a decision for council. We will be receiving recommendations from staff, is my understanding, but council will be the decision makers on all fees and charges. Is that correct?
Absolutely is. We're bringing those in the March council along with the annual plan.
Thank you, Tracy. Can we move to 4.4, the financial? Everyone's getting very excited over here, Sarah, so we'll start with Councillor Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. There's a lot of questions here, obviously, but I'd start the first one around housing cap purchase total. That's capital renewals for alignment, correct? Okay, would that be able to be updated to just clarify that because you mention it differently in the table to the data? But my questions that have led to, with changes in the new provider for maintenance, I believe that it's changed. The expectation was set that there would be a cost saving across the board. But I'm seeing about a 40k jump in just one section of the general maintenance. Is that part of the new provider stuff, and is that something why are we seeing such an increase in that area?
Through you, Chair Sharon, thank you for that excellent question. With regards to the maintenance, you'll see there's been quite a bit of a shuffle occur in the last couple of years, and that's as our facilities team have come on board and come up to speed and gain a better understanding around those units and what they want those budgets specifically to deliver has changed. To answer whether that is just a result of the contract, I cannot provide you that off the top of my head. We would need to come back. But what I would say that would be captured within there is that we have annual inspections that need to be undertaken for our heat pumps. We have a lot more things other than just the contract maintenance contract, if that's the one you're specifically referring to.
Just supplementary to that, it was more around the maintenance general, which I think was part of a RFP that went out back last year. So I don't know if that was included in that or what parts that sort of pertains to.
Through you, Chair, the maintenance general is general maintenance. It's the sink's got a leak and we've had to bring in a plumber type maintenance, or it's preemptive maintenance so that we don't get to a renewal point. It's painting, it's all things that are maintenance. The contract cost you're referring to would be, in my opinion, would sit under the maintenance contract line item. But again, would seek clarification and come back.
Mayor Scott?
Thanks, Chair Sharon. Through you to Sarah, can you help me understand a little bit better what falls under overheads, please?
Overheads, it's our internal overheads. I think we discussed this, must have been in the financial strategy workshop actually, and you'll remember vividly because I said that finance is a gift to everyone, and we all know that that's top priority for everyone. So within the overheads, it's a portion of the buildings, it's a portion of the finance team, the HR team, the legal team, the procurement. It's all of those activities that aren't an outward-facing activity of council. So this will potentially be impacted by the 3 waters stranded overheads calc.
Chair Sharon, thank you. Interesting to see, and I remember us talking about adding them in, that's why the zeros were there. That's been a really substantial increase, and to be fair, it's an increase that surprised me a little bit looking at the portfolio. Obviously, that doesn't cover the direct things that would normally fall into corporate overheads because they're directly charged energy cost rates, blah, 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 all of those things. So I'm just wanting to make sure that there's no double charging going on there. Staff costs as well, you were talking about the sort of facing costs, and you've described who, but staff costs have also gone up fairly significantly over a short period. It's probably not one for now, but maybe to indicate as we move into our particularly into our long-term plan, but it might actually be some questions that I'll have in annual plan, is having those broken down a little bit more in workshop. Sometimes, and would you be comfortable with that if we actually got a better understanding of what made up those costs?
Made up the internal overheads, we can definitely provide that. And with regards to the staff costs, I would just put out there that I think we've had conversations within long-term plans and annual plans around the increased requirement or need on the council staff to support these units and the pensioners that are within them. So that's probably where these costs have the staff cost line has increased, as it's probably a truer reflection around the quantum of time that staff are having to put into the units in themselves, as opposed to an increase in number of staff in that space. But I'll leave that to Hamish to come back to you.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. So, without going into the details and without having any time to prepare, the management of these pensioner units is almost a full-time job now. She's probably sitting online, and so for in 2020 for $25,000 is about half an FTE. I'd say actually with the new requirements we have on us, the amount of social type work that she does with these residents, which just is so valuable to those people. It does take a fair bit of time. That's kind of the basis, I would say. But we can look into that further and come back to
you. Just a final question. I'll leave it there. As part of that coming back, I think there needs to be some consideration as to what is the responsibility of staff when it comes to the social work aspect as you describe, and whether we are charging for that. I think that's interesting for me and doesn't surprise me, but I actually think it opens up some other considerations that we need to think of. The other part I would find of value, and it's asking if you can consider providing this as well, is a comparison of perhaps a similar size portfolio that another council has and what their costs are going into it. I think having a portfolio of our size, us being assured that that is a reasonable staff kind of allocation to that portfolio size would be helpful. I think we have a lot of considerations to make with pensioner housing in general, and I think that could be a part of the puzzle as well.
I think what you're hearing, Sarah and Hamish and Tracy, is this is of high interest for us as a council, and to understand and debate and analyse some of the detail, I think is really, really important. So I'm sure there's some work to be done and brought back, which we very much appreciate. I'm just mindful of the time, everyone. Have we got any more questions regarding the breakdown of the financials in 4.4? Chris.
Thank you, Chair Sharon. Just a quick one. Again, we're looking at the detail, but the rates jump 52k. What does that entail?
The rates, through you, Chair Sharon, the rates increases purely our council rates increases over that period of time. We talk around our average rates increase, and it's currently for the proposed annual plan sitting at 4.83, but that's our average. That doesn't mean that every property will get a 4.83% increase. And what we've found over the during the long-term plan and probably the long-term plan before that, our three waters drove a significant amount of the rates increases that we incurred, and that predominantly hits your residential properties, which our pensioner housing portfolio sits in the residential space. So although we might have been talking around an 11.28 increase in year one of the long-term plan, for that, the hit that the pensioner housing units took might have been 18, 19, 20%. I would have to go away and do the numbers, but just that's sort of where it sort of falls.
Comfortable with that? It's a very good point and a question to ask, though, because you know what an average might look like can be quite significantly different to what the ratepayer actually ends up paying. So thank you for that. Sarah, any other questions on 4.4? I'll just want to keep us moving. Okay, section 4.5, very interesting assessment of the condition. It looks like there's a significant amount of work to be undertaken, would be my overarching comment on that. Are there any questions regarding that table, though, that Sarah has provided us with? Councillor Chris?
Thank you, Chair Sharon. Sort of a question, but with the condition asset highlight, that's just, I'm assuming, faults or issues. It wasn't clear in that that's exactly what that was. If that could be put in there, but I'm assuming that that's what it was.
Through you, Chair Sharon, yes, it's the number of issues that need urgent renewals in that first column, the number of issues that need units that need a kitchen upgrade. Yes, so the difficulty that the team have is that a lot of these, I guess, more significant upgrades are very disruptive to the resident. So we have to time it very carefully. So it does take a fair bit of effort to get on top of those. Even if we have the funding, it's quite a logistical challenge, I suppose.
Thanks, Hamish. Any other questions on the condition assessment data? Just one more? Yep.
Just one more item with looking at the items on the next page, on page 16. It's still part of that one there. Sorry. The the heat pumps that were budgeted, two of them for 4,800, but only one was installed at 3,700. Was that a fact? What was the factor for that? Or why was that an increase?
Through you, Chair Sharon, I'd have to go back through to the offices to check out the invoice on that one. Unfortunately, I don't have the details to hand. Okay, come back to you.
Okay, section 4.6, the renewals planning, which is, a little bit of what you've touched on. Councillor Griss, do we have any specific questions regarding what is planned? Not seeing anything. Okay, item 4.7, bit of a continuation, what we're thinking of doing. Sarah, is that fair? Any questions on that? Councillor Chris?
Thank you, Chair. With the Elsinore water main being carried over from 25-26, is that budget carried across? It sort of shows as though it's used in both years from the table on 4.6 and 4.7.
Through you, Chair Sharon, it will be determined at the end of the financial year. So should come 30 June 2026, that $100,000 was overspent by $10,000 because it was utilised, or that full $100,000, I should say, was fully utilised. It's meant that it has been pivoted to spend on something more urgent in that space, in which case, no, it won't be a carry forward. If that activity is underspent at 30 June 2026 and there is a contract in place, you will get a recommendation from officers August, September, recommending that it is carried forward, but that is again a council decision. It is a recommendation from officers, but it is a council decision.
What about section 4.9, the reserve balance? Great, great pictures, Sarah, and as you've explained, we're now working our way back up from that. But are there any questions from councillors for this particular section? It's very good, very. Trace?
I just wanted to double emphasise, I'm not sure if it got lost in some of our words before that, the reduction in the reserve was due to the building of the new unit. It wasn't due to overspending and reaching into reserves for pension housing.
Sorry, can I just make a further comment on that? As part of your long-term plan work that you'll be doing on that, on the condition assessments, you would see that we will be scheduling those works within the next long-term plan, and all of that data will come into and feed into where we project that reserve balance to be at the end of the proposed long-term plan. So this is just a capture at this point in time, and the hard stuff, because there is quite a bit of condition assessment work that obviously needs to be factored in. So although we're looking okay now, please don't take that as we're all going to be great. I think you've got a lot of decisions to make as part of the long-term plan.
Councillor Peter.
So while we're on an upward trend, one would expect that over the next long-term plan that'll be flat, because we'll be investing into the repairs that you've outlined in the units out of any surpluses that we would have from rental income. Right.
Any other questions before I close this one off? I think the risk analysis and the updates you've provided there in blue, Sarah, are reassuring that we continue to monitor the risks as they appear. It is good news, though, that the Healthy Homes non-compliance has been addressed, and I think, as I've already mentioned, this will be a hot topic for a lot more debate and analysis in the upcoming process. Are there any final statements regarding this part of the paper?
Just a comment on the general work here, and it's good to see that this is something that a lot of people really support, and I think a big one around affordability for these pensioners, because they have struggled a lot in recent times, and it has been made the comment many times that they've felt the increases. So seeing that it's a bit more controlled is good. So thank you.
Mayor Scott.
Thanks, Chair Sharon. Thank you for the work, team. Much appreciated. This is going to be a difficult conversation, for it always is when it comes to pensioner housing, and we'll be having this conversation in the long-term plan, because absolutely putting the rent increases up can be quite painful, but we also have to make sure that we keep things self-funded, because if we don't, then other pensioners who are struggling to pay their rates are having to subsidise someone else to be in lower cost housing. So it's making sure that we're always keeping our eye on the wider picture as well, and this is going to be a theme of the LTP of when we're looking at something, knowing the unintended consequences or the other impacts that it might have. The only way we can make those decisions in an informed way, though, is to have information like you've just provided. So I'm very grateful for all your work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any other closing comments before I put the motion? So the recommendations on page 11, that the report from the CFO concerning the management report be received. Can I please have a mover? Councillor Peter, seconded by Councillor Kishan. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. A closing comment from me, Sarah, team, Tracy, everyone who's contributed towards this. This was a great report to be able to start diving into some very key factors. I think the sense around the table is that we understand a lot more now, and it's a credit to you, Sarah, and to your team to have been able to provide the level of detail in a way that we and the community can understand. Great discussion this morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your contributions. I would like to sincerely thank everyone for attending. Do we need to close this or leave it open? At the workshop. Okay, so thank you everyone online for attending, and I'll call this committee meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone.